Hello, everybody. This is Gail Perry and Cassie Rice. How are you today, Cassie?
I am great. How are you?
Good. I'm good. We have such an interesting topic today that is very pertinent and very timely, I would say. Don't you think this topic is timely, Cassie?
I'd say so, yeah, for sure.
We hope everybody listening to this or who will ever listen to this will step forward and communicate and contact your elected representatives, right, Cassie?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Participation in government is essential,
For
even when,
democracy.
sorry,
For democracy.
for everybody, for democracy.
So if I may, when people step forward, especially nonprofit leaders representing a large constituency in various elected officials' districts, representing large numbers of voters in their districts, when they reach out to speak to their elected official, what is happening? Participation in democracy
Yes,
in the
yes.
in the process.
In the process, it's the whole process. Free speech.
And so today, if everybody's joining, we usually do some banter at the beginning of our talk while people are still logging on. But today we're going to talk about insider tips. And we have our very own insider, Cassie Rice, who's going to tell you her background in a second. But these are insider tips on how to communicate effectively with your elected officials. And so, Cassie, share your background, your political background, because you have been on the firing line up on Capitol Hill.
I have. I have been on the firing line for Capitol Hill. I worked for a member of Congress for almost 10 years. And I worked on his campaign and in his Washington office and in his district office. And I was able to see how each work and connect and how all of the offices come together to help democracy.
Yes. And Cassie, you've seen the bad and the ugly of outreach to elected officials. Is that correct?
I would say, yes, I would say that. I was working on Capitol Hill during the Affordable Care Act passage. I was answering the phones. I got yelled at all day, every day. Um, and I also talked to very, very lovely people who had a lot of things to say. And those people stuck out in my mind, and I remember them still.
So Cassie, I'm so glad that she's with us today so she can give us expert coaching on exactly what to do because I think we need to be on top of our game. Cassie, let's spend a minute and talk about why this is so important right now in democracy and the life of the United States in the world of nonprofit government cuts.
Well, I strongly believe that every person and organization needs to be in touch with their elected officials at every level of government all of the time. In today's world of turbulence and political turbulence, it is especially important to stay connected with elected officials so that your elected officials know and understand how what is happening in the government affects you. And that really is the biggest piece to all of this is making sure that you keep that dialogue going, so that you can continue to have, so your member, your representative can help you navigate the situation, which they can do. They can.
Can do, right. They can help you in many ways. And they probably want to, right?
They do. I mean, I have never seen an elected official who does not want to help a constituent. I've in my work with on the Hill and in state government and state politics and even in the county, I have never met an elected official who did not want to help.
And one of the things you said earlier on our earlier LinkedIn Live on this same topic was that the people run for office because they want to help, and
Mhm.
somehow that didn't really occur to me.
I mean, most people do.
They
I
want
know,
power.
right? I mean, that is why you're there, right? I mean, I would
Yeah, yeah. So everybody, mindset. When you are preparing to reach out to your elected officials, remember that they typically want to know what's going on in their district, right?
they do.
They
They
do.
do.
And they want to play nice, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, because you represent voters. Is that correct?
Yes, I would, that is a big, that's an important fact to go into a meeting with or to go into be starting a relationship with. It is essential that you say, I am a constituent of yours, and here is what I have to say.
Mhm. Would it
Here's what I have to say.
would it be appropriate to say my organization employs 250 people in your district and brings in economic return, and we represent 5,000 donors, most of whom are in your district. And would it be appropriate for you to say those things?
I mean, you could. I wouldn't, what I would do is I would really just say, I'm in your district and it's your constitutional duty to listen to me. Even if you don't agree, still need to listen.
Would you find that these days, I mean, we have had questions from people about what if the representative is on the other side of the aisle? What if they're on the other party? What has been your experience, Cassie, with people on either side of the party being willing to listen?
So I was very lucky. My old boss would meet with anybody and he would listen to them, and would help anybody when we could. A lot of elected officials have can help with making connections in the community, for you, or their staff can help with that. They also can help with specific agencies that are related, to their office. And so there's lots of ways a member, or somebody who's elected can help you even if you are not on the same side of the aisle. You could say to them, "Oh, can you help introduce me to this organization? Or can you help connect me to this specific individual?" Um, yeah, and that, I mean, that was a question we would get all of the time. I think it's totally appropriate to say that.
And what kind of specific individuals might a nonprofit be asking for introductions for or to?
Maybe with somebody on the county level, somebody who they're having a hard time getting a meeting with, who is controls, funding for them. Um, any sorts of whatever, I would say whatever issue that you have, an elected representative has a lot more power than they think they do. And so if you put it in their minds and say, well, could you help me with connect this? Or can you help me with this organization? Or can you help with X, Y, and Z? You know, the worst they can say is no.
And that's an easy thing they can give you,
Mhm.
as
E-
opposed to something more difficult like a vote.
Exactly. And elected elected officials love, I mean, they really love to help. I mean, there are just Jesse Helms from North Carolina. He
It's
was
on
in
the other-
office.
he
He
was
was
on-
on, he helped anybody he could, and what he was known for was his constituent service, and he helped.
Mhm. So what about your experience? We're talking a lot about Congress.
Mhm.
What about state and county and local and city? Because those also sources have a lot. They are able to help the nonprofits in their communities to a great extent.
They are, and they probably have more impact than a member of Congress does. And they probably know the right people, and have better relationships with the right people. So, I mean, if it were me, I would start on the state level, um, or the county level, depending on or the city level, depending on what funding. I think, I think the biggest important takeaway from this is to have a relationship with elected officials at all levels of government.
And we
That's the
recommend,
big
yes,
takeaway.
and we recommend everybody know your elected officials at all level of government already. And it's never too late to establish a new relationship with somebody. Call on them and say, we'd love to come by and share with you about our organization, right? Is that what you would say?
I would say that, or you can invite them to come to your organization and see the work that you do on the ground every day. And that is much more impactful
Yes.
for an elected official.
So would you in this say, all right, this is a difficult scenario. So we are dealing with drastic government cuts that are coming out of nowhere. Nonprofits are laying off people. They're in panic mode. They're in crisis mode. How do they approach a government official who is voting for the cuts?
That's a hard one. I mean, the most that you can say is, I am not happy with your vote. And then I would say, where else would you go for this funding? I mean, I would ask their advice on how to, you know, get
Mhm.
the funding back.
What would be their recommendations? Yeah,
Yeah.
we believe in the advice visit and asking for advice and input all the time at all levels of life and government.
And
Um,
and you can also ask the staff that.
oh,
So if
let's talk about the role of the staff, because that's what
you
your
can also,
job is.
yes, yes. So in a member of Congress, his office, my boss had 20 staff people
Mhm.
who had across Washington and North Carolina. Um, and we all had different roles. And so the best thing is to find out who schedules the elected representative
Uh-huh.
and who handles those meetings. And then what the approach is, I am in your district, I am a constituent, I expect a meeting. It may not be soon, but I expect a meeting.
Is it okay to sort of make a demand that I expect a meeting?
Yes.
It is okay because we
Yeah.
don't do that with donors and fundraising.
Mhm.
We say, if I may I ask?
Mhm.
So you're a little bit more directive with your elected officials. So in
Yeah.
a way, it's like fundraising. In a way, it's like pushing right ahead,
Yeah.
being being pushy.
I would stand in your power, stand. uh it's it's hard to it it's hard to make to get far in politics without standing in your power.
I guess so. I guess so. And so, everybody, if you're listening, we're happy to take your question. If you have a comment or want to contribute to the conversation, please let us know. I sound like NPR here. Call in with your questions. Um, but Cassie, let's move on into how you're talking a little about how to ask for the appointment. Do you have any other tips?
On how to ask for the appointment. Uh,
We
so
expect.
what I would do, so I worked for 4 years as a scheduler for my boss.
Uh-huh.
What was the most effective for folks getting on the calendar
Mhm.
is they would call me and then say, when is he in North Carolina? And I
Okay.
would give them the dates, and and they would kind of drill down on how, when it would be possible to have the meeting. And it's not a question of whether or not you're going to have it. It's a when is it going to happen?
Ooh, not whether the representative will meet with you, but when. That's a great.
Mhm,
I love that.
mhm.
Because again,
Yeah.
we tiptoe with donors. And so in government relations, we have to be a lot more specific. A lot,
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
the idea of standing in your power. So one of the things that we've talked about, Cassie, is the role of the gatekeeper. And you were a gatekeeper. And so tell us again how we work with gatekeepers.
So you want to treat the gatekeeper like a donor. That would be my advice. As a staff person of the federal agency, could not accept gifts. But what was really great was when people told my boss how good of a job I did getting them on the calendar,
Yes, and getting them help, right? Because you helped
getting them help.
passports, you helped gosh, all sorts of things, right?
Passports, social, I mean, all the federal agencies, there's so many different ways to help constituents. But I think the main thing with the gatekeeper is treat them like a person and honor their role because it's not an easy one. And say, I know, I know you're working hard. Would love to have an update on when we can have the meeting or,
Love that.
something to that effect.
Mhm. And so everybody, hot tip from Cassie, if you compliment the gatekeeper to her boss or his boss, they will love you forever
They
and
will.
they will be more likely to do you favors.
I mean, I still remember this was 15 years ago. I still remember emails that people sent my boss about the good job that I had done. So
And so you treated them well, right?
I did.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so everybody, I mean, we talk a lot about gatekeepers and major gift fundraising as well, that it's a tendency of some people just be brusque and blow them off because they're like, treat them like a peon. But if you honor the gatekeeper, honor their role, treat them as a whole person, as Cassie's just said, the gates of heaven will fling open, maybe.
Well, yeah, and think about it from their perspective. They are dealing with all the demands on their boss's time. And everybody, I don't my boss would have a list of people pages long of people who wanted to meet with him.
Really.
And it would, depending on how long it would take, if you moved up that list faster, depends on, how you treat the people, you get up that list faster.
This is such interesting information. I had no idea. I'm so much in the fundraising world that I've not been making people line up outside the elected official.
Yeah.
Do we call them politicians or elected officials? What's the appropriate term?
I mean, they're both.
They're both
They're both. Elected official, I think sounds more um um
graceful,
respectful.
respectful. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think probably so because politicians sometimes get that word and that concept gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you promised that you would share today is exactly what to say and how you say it. And what we're really interested in is like, how do you share a concise, because you emphasized the word concise before,
Mhm.
story that has impact. So tell us more about these stories that we might tell and what we might say once we get in the door.
So once you get in the door, you sit down, you're like, oh man, it's happening. Um, and you're like, oh God, what do I say now? Um, so the first thing you want to say is, this is how the government affects my organization. These are the rules, these are the regulations we must follow. This is the funding we receive or don't. And you want to say that very clearly and say, link your reason for being there. You want to make that connection first, right? There is a reason why you are there.
Mhm.
Um, and then after you've talked about that, you want to tell um, a meaningful story that is related to your organization. And by that I mean a story about an individual who um, really needed help and was able to get it because of that elected official.
Love it.
Or these 2,000 children are not going to have food because of these funding cuts. Tie it directly back to their
You're going to
constituents.
have hungry children in your back door in your district.
Nobody wants that.
No, nobody wants hungry children in their
Nobody
district.
wants hungry children. No,
Or sick children who need help, or children
exactly.
who need shoes and coats in the winter.
Exactly. Um, and then say, this is how your office can help.
Ooh, okay. So you've got to do some research ahead of time.
Well, you need to be aware of the funding streams and the intricacies of their level of representation.
Mhm.
Um, and say, this is how your office can help, or this is how, like, would you be willing to help connect me with person X in the community?
Mhm.
Can you give me advice on where I should go for money to feed those 2,000 children?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Do you think that
different thing.
are elected officials working on alternative supply routes for nonprofit funding within their district? Do you think that's happening?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They usually know where the funding is, and they
Additional
could.
sources of funding, you mean?
Mhm.
Tell us about that. Additional sources of funding. Just because the federal government block grants or whatever they're cutting, there are other sources.
Well, the state and what else? The county and towns, city and towns. So there are lots of sources, right? I think you might know
Yeah,
you
I mean, I've done lobbying for my consulting client, capital campaign clients with the state legislature. I've registered as a lobbyist. I visited with elected officials and share with them the benefit of this project. That's what you do when you lobby. You visit with elected officials who are friendly and you share with them why this project is such a great idea. But we're not talking about lobbying. We're talking about friend making. And the very first steps is you don't want to have to be in the lobbying position unless you're being formal and you're registered and you're following all the rules. But it's perfectly appropriate to invite elected officials to your events, to show up at their events and their town halls and with a smile.
Mhm.
If you could say something complimentary about them in front of other voters, I think that would matter too. What do you think, Cassie? Would that
I
matter?
mean, that would make anybody feel good.
Thank you so much for your assistance for the hungry children in our district or for the cancer research for
Yeah,
our local university.
yeah,
Appreciate you opening additional doors.
yeah.
Um, so I hope everybody, as they're listening, are getting more ideas and you're building confidence on how to reach out, who to reach out to. You reach out to the staff, is that correct? You reach out to
Yeah.
the
Yes, the staff. And so with the member of Congress, they have multiple offices. And so I handled his North Carolina schedule, and another person handled his DC schedule. Um, you would have to get to the right person, but all it takes is asking questions.
And we teach ask a lot of questions, asking questions in our work and our LinkedIn Lives and our blog. So I also want to tell you that Cassie and I are going to be presenting on this topic at AFP Icon in Seattle in a couple of weeks. I think it's Tuesday morning, the 29th of April. Does that sound right? At
Yes.
8 a.m. Pacific time. And we're so excited. This is our warm up to the big AFP presentation that we've never presented on this topic before. We think it's very timely, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it is very timely
Very
and
timely.
very timely.
Cassie, how about let's close out with a call to action. Can you do that for us?
So a call to action is I do a lot of political side note. I do a lot of political work in my free time. And what I tell folks is that to acknowledge that we are not in normal times, and to say, make sure that you take care of yourself, and for nonprofits, make sure you take care of the mission. Um, and then also be as loud as you can. This moment in particular requires that um, every organization, every person, every single voice is heard. And that is my call to action to all of you. Be
Be,
heard.
be as loud as you can. Be heard and be heard loudly.
Stand in your power.
Love it. Love it, Cassie. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. We hope you have gotten some great tips and built up your courage and you've thought deeply. You're taking to heart Cassie's call to action. It's time to stand in your power and speak up and speak loudly and reach out to those elected officials today.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Cassie.